The message arrived on a Thursday, but that's not really where it started. It started a few months earlier, in the narrow kitchen downstairs, the one that always smelled faintly of coffee and laundry detergent. I just moved into her house. She was my landlady, but that word felt wrong, too formal. Most mornings she wore a cardigan over a worn t-shirt, sleeves pushed up, hair tied loose. "Milk's in the top shelf now," she'd said the first week, like she'd been waiting for me to ask. I hadn't, but she noticed anyway. It became like that, her noticing things. How I took my coffee, no sugar, 2 spoons of creamer. How I left my shoes near the steps even though she'd told me not to. How I worked late, headphones in, drawing for hours without speaking to anyone. Sometimes she'd knock on the railing between our floors. Just one light tap, a kind of check-in. "You alive up there?" Mostly, I'd answer, half laughing. "Good. Rent's due, by the way." That was her humor. Soft, teasing, never too close. There was nothing dramatic about that morning. The sky was a dull gray. Laundry hung from the balcony like quiet flags, and the kettle clicked off before I remembered to pour water. She was already at the counter, flipping through a grocery list, pen between her fingers. "You look tired," she said. "Client call. Midnight." She nodded, didn't ask for details. Just pushed the jar of instant coffee toward me. The radio hummed an old song in the background. I don't even remember which one, but I remember her hand brushing mine as she reached for the sugar. A small, passing thing, but it made me aware of every inch of space between us. "Sorry," she said quickly. "It's fine." Her eyes flicked up, a beat too long. Then she smiled, the kind that fades before it finishes. There's a strange comfort in quiet company. You start to crave it without realizing. The sound of her slippers on the stairs. The way she'd hum when she cooked. The faint citrus smell of her detergent in the hallway. I never meant to think about her that way, but one night I caught myself sketching her. Not her face, just her posture. The way she leaned against the doorframe when she talked. I closed the notebook before the lines became anything. That's how I knew I was already in trouble. Then, last week, my girlfriend, who'd been more absent than present lately, introduced me to her sister over a video call. The irony didn't hit me then. But now, standing in that same kitchen, the kettle clicking again, I realized I hadn't heard from my girlfriend in 3 days. That's when the text came. "I'm wearing what you like. Come see." I froze. The name flashing on the screen wasn't hers. It was her sister's, my landlady. For a moment, everything slowed. The hum of the fridge, the faint drip from the tap, the sound of her slippers somewhere upstairs. I didn't open the message right away. Just stared at it. Thumb hovering. Heart doing that uneven rhythm it hadn't done in years. The silence between us suddenly felt heavier than the walls. I set the phone down on the counter upside down. Waited for the next sound. And then her voice, from the stairs. Soft, almost amused. "You got a message, didn't you?" I looked up. She was standing halfway down, eyes unreadable. That same cardigan slipping off one shoulder. The kettle clicked again. Neither of us moved. I didn't answer her text that night, but the silence that followed, that stayed. It lingered in the way she moved around me. Slower, quieter. We both pretended nothing had happened. That's the thing about pretending. It only works if you both agree not to notice. The next morning, she was in the garden, kneeling by the rose bushes, gloves half off, strands of hair stuck to her cheek. I almost said something about the message, but the words never lined up right in my mouth. Instead, I stood there, holding her mail, feeling like a stranger in my own home. She looked up. "You sleep at all?" "Some." "Your eyes disagree." Her tone was gentle, not teasing this time. I passed her the envelopes. One slipped out of my hand. She caught it, barely. Our fingers brushed. Just skin against skin. Nothing cinematic. But it startled something alive in me. Later, we sat on the porch. She made tea, her way of saying we'll ignore what we shouldn't talk about. She poured 2 cups. "You draw for clients, right? Ever draw for yourself?" "Not lately," I said. "Feels selfish." That's the best reason to do it, she said, sipping. Selfish things are usually the most honest. There was a pause. Then she added, when my husband was alive, he used to fix things that weren't broken. Said it gave him purpose. I think we all do that in our own ways. I didn't know how to respond. I hadn't realized she was a widow. She'd never said it outright before. You miss him? I asked quietly. She smiled, small and real. Sometimes. Mostly. I miss being missed. That line hung there, like smoke that wouldn't clear. After that, conversation came easier, but it felt heavier somehow. We talked about small things, music, deadlines, grocery store prices. But under every word was that memory of her text, sharp and private. She leaned back, eyes half closed, teacup resting against her knee. You know, she said, I almost sold this house once. Too many ghosts. Why didn't you? She opened one eye, met mine. Maybe I got used to sharing space with what haunts me. I didn't know if she meant her past, or me. When she stood to leave, she touched my shoulder. Light, absent-minded, but deliberate enough to stay with me. The kind of touch that wasn't meant to mean anything, but did anyway. Her hand lingered just long enough for me to feel the warmth through my shirt. Then she drew back. Lock the gate when you go in, she said. I nodded, though I hadn't planned to leave. Later, upstairs, I tried to draw again. My pencil didn't move. Instead, I thought about her hands. The faint dirt under her nails, the way she'd said being missed. And I realized something I didn't want to admit. I was starting to miss her, too. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. It rained for 3 days straight. The kind of rain that makes sound feel heavier, like everything's thinking too loud. She knocked on my door the second night, holding a candle. Power's out, she said. As if that explained why she was standing there in her sweater, barefoot. I let her in. She moved around my small space like she'd been there 100 times, lighting the candle and setting it on my desk. The glow caught the side of her face, softening everything sharp. Cold? She asked. A little, she smiled. You always say that when you mean yes. I didn't answer. I just watched her pull my spare blanket from the chair and wrap it around herself. We sat there for a while, the candle flickering between us, the air smelling faintly of rain and wax. She looked at my sketches spread across the desk. You've been drawing me, she said quietly. Not a question, just a truth laid out like a small wound. I opened my mouth, closed it. I was just practicing figures. She nodded once, as if she'd expected the lie. You're good, she said, eyes still on the paper. You catch small things, things people don't think anyone notices. There was no accusation in her voice, but something in me wanted to apologize anyway. The silence stretched, slow and fragile. Then the door creaked, a sound from the hall. My girlfriend's voice, faint from the phone speaker on my bed. Hey, you there? I'd forgotten the call was still connected. Her video paused mid-freeze from earlier. The irony hit sharp and fast. She glanced at the screen. Her jaw tightened, not jealousy exactly. Something older. Resigned. You should answer, she said. She won't notice. That's the problem. She stood, pulling the blanket tighter. The candlelight flickered between us like a heartbeat we were both pretending not to hear. I shouldn't have sent that message, she said suddenly, voice low. I didn't reply. I know. She met my eyes. But you thought about it. My throat tightened. There was no right thing to say. She looked down, brushing her thumb over the edge of the desk. The way people do when they're keeping something steady inside them. You remind me of when I used to be curious, she said. That's dangerous for someone my age. Outside, thunder rolled, far but felt. She turned toward the door, then hesitated. For a second, we both moved the same way, not forward, not apart, just caught in the middle. If she had leaned in, even slightly, the space between us would have vanished. But she didn't. She just reached up and fixed the collar of my shirt, fingers brushing my neck. Once. Good night, she whispered. Then she left, leaving the candle still burning, half melted. like it was waiting for something that never quite happened. We started walking together. Not planned, just something that happened after the rain cleared. The neighborhood was quiet that evening, air damp and clean, the pavement still dark from where puddles hadn't dried. She carried a small thermos of tea. I carried nothing. Maybe that said enough. "Feels good to be out," she said. "Yeah. You're not a talker, are you?" "Depends who's asking." She smiled. "Depends who's answering." The kind of exchange that would have meant nothing to anyone else. But there was a current under it, something neither of us named. We stopped by the park, the one with the uneven benches. She sat down first, tucking her hands into her sleeves. "I heard your call last night," she said, eyes on the ground. "With my girlfriend?" A nod. She sounded young. "She's 23, I said. "Ah." A small pause. "And you?" 24. She laughed softly, not mocking, just noticing the space between years and what it carried. "You don't look at her the way she looks at you." That stung. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. I picked at the edge of the bench, nails catching on old paint. "I think she wants someone steadier." "And you?" "I don't know what I want." That was the closest I'd ever come to saying her name out loud for what she meant. She took out the thermos and poured tea into the lid, handed it to me first. Her fingers brushed mine, once deliberate this time. "I used to think people fell in love by accident," she said. "Now I think it's more like..." "Like what?" "Like stepping off a curb you didn't see coming." I tried to laugh, but it came out too thin. "Do you regret sending that text?" I asked quietly. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp but soft. "Every day since." She looked away before I could answer. Her voice dropped. "But regret's not the same as wanting to undo it." That line landed between us like the sound of glass setting on a table. Fragile, inevitable. I don't know how long we sat there. Car passed. Somewhere a dog barked. The city kept moving while we didn't. "You shouldn't wait for me," she said finally. "I'm not." "Then what are you doing?" She looked at me then, not in the polite, neighborly way. It was the kind of look that could undo years of good behavior if held too long. I wanted to reach for her, just once, but she stood before I could. "I think this is the part," she said softly, "where we both pretend we don't know what's next." She turned, walking toward the gate, thermos swinging gently at her side. I sat there long after she disappeared from view, the taste of her tea still warm on my tongue. And the question, the one neither of us had the courage to ask, stayed louder than everything else. For a week, I didn't see her. No footsteps on the stairs. No hum from the kitchen. No late knocks on the railing. Just the empty, quiet rhythm of a house that had started remembering how to be alone again. First, I thought maybe she was avoiding me. Then I realized, maybe I was avoiding her too. I left early, came home late, worked longer hours. It didn't help. The silence followed like static. Faint, constant, impossible to tune out. On the 8th day, I saw her car wasn't in the driveway. The front garden looked neglected, soil dry, leaves scattered. It was unlike her. I knocked once, twice. Nothing. I texted, "Everything okay?" The message stayed unread. I typed another, longer, riskier, then deleted it. That night, my girlfriend called. We hadn't spoken properly in days. "I saw my sister," she said casually, between bites of something. "She's been helping my mom. You know Mom's sick again." I didn't. "She doesn't talk much lately," she went on. "Said she's been tired. I think she's finally letting go of the house, though." She mentioned selling. My chest tightened. "Selling?" "Yeah." She said it's too big for one person. The words hit harder than I expected. I almost asked when. I almost said, "She hasn't told me." But I didn't. A few days later, I heard her come in late. I was upstairs, lights off, pretending to sleep. The sound of her keys, her shoes slipping off. A faint sigh, then quiet. Took everything not to go downstairs. The next morning, I found a box on the porch, labeled "For you." Inside, an old mug, a sketch I'd left in the kitchen weeks ago, and a small note. Don't forget to water the mint plant. It doesn't like too much sun. That was all. No explanation. No goodbye. Just something that felt halfway between care and closure. I stood in the doorway, holding the note like it was fragile. The smell of her detergent clung to the paper. For a second, I thought about running after her car, saying something, anything. But what? Stay? Don't go? I haven't figured out what this is yet. None of it fit. None of it would change the ending she'd already started writing. That night, I sat at my desk and drew her again. Not her face this time, just the thermos, the sleeve of her cardigan, the small crease where her thumb had pressed against the lid. Then I opened my messages. Typed, "I wish you'd told me." Watched the cursor blink. Deleted it. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. The screen dimmed. The mint plant sat by the window, reaching for light it didn't quite get. It was Sunday when she came back. Early evening, the light thinning out, soft enough to blur edges. I was in the kitchen, fixing a loose hinge on the cabinet. Not because it needed fixing, but because my hands needed something to do. She walked in quietly, like she didn't want to startle the house. Her hair was tied back, sweater sleeves pushed up. She looked the same, but smaller somehow, like she'd been somewhere heavy. "You kept the mint alive," she said. Barely. A small smile. Then silence. I wanted to say something about the box she'd left. About the note. About how the house didn't sound right without her radio humming in the mornings. But none of it came out right in my head. So instead, I asked, "You're selling?" She leaned against the counter, folded her arms. "Thinking about it." "You weren't going to tell me?" Her eyes met mine. Calm, steady, unreadable. "Didn't think it was my place to make you stay. I never said I'd leave." "I know." She looked down, fingers tracing the rim of her mug. "That's what makes it worse." The kettle clicked off between us. She poured water into 2 cups without asking what I wanted. She still remembered. "I didn't mean for things to get—" I stopped. Couldn't find the word. "Complicated?" she offered. "Yeah." She stirred her cup slowly. Complicated happens when 2 people start seeing each other too clearly. The words landed heavier than I expected. She went on, voice low. "You remind me of a time I thought I could still begin things. I don't get to feel that often anymore." I watched her shoulders, the way they rose and dropped, like she was trying not to break under her own honesty. "I think about you," I said finally, quiet almost to myself. She didn't move, didn't look up, just kept stirring until the spoon stilled. "I know," she said. There was no anger in it, no surprise either, just understanding, soft, unhurried, like she'd known for a while. I waited for her to pull away again, but she didn't. She just reached for the thermos lid, wiped a bit of spilled tea from the counter, and said, almost to the air, "You deserve someone who doesn't have to think twice." We stood there in silence, the kind that wasn't empty, just full of everything unsaid. Then, as she turned to go, she touched my arm light, almost absent, but with a kind of quiet finality. Her thumb brushed once over the inside of my wrist, a small, steadying gesture. "Okay?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Okay." She left the mug on the counter, half full, steam fading. I didn't call after her. Didn't need to. Some goodbyes happen without leaving. A year passed. Not all at once, just quietly in coffee spoons and laundry cycles. The house didn't sell. She said the market was bad. But I think that was only half true. I stayed upstairs, still renting, still drawing. Some days she'd forget I was there. Some days she'd knock on the railing twice just to remind herself I was. We'd found a new rhythm. Not what we were, not what we could have been, but something steady, real. On Sundays, we still walked to the park. The bench was the same, uneven, splintered on one side. She always brought the thermos. I always forgot cups, so we shared from the lid. "Still too sweet," I'd say. "You still drink it anyway," she'd answer. It was our version of a joke, the kind that built walls and tore them down at the same time. She started volunteering at the community center. I picked up more clients, fewer hours. We'd cross paths in the kitchen, her with grocery bags, me with ink-stained hands. Once, at 8:47 a.m., she caught me sketching by the window. "Still drawing?" she asked. "Still living here," I said. She smiled, the kind that took its time. Maybe that's the same thing. Nothing between us was confessed. Nothing needed to be. But sometimes, when she leaned over my shoulder to look at my work, I could feel the warmth of her breath. Soft, careful, familiar. Once, she pointed at a sketch of the park bench. "You never draw faces," she said. "Too easy to get wrong." She nodded, touching the edge of the paper. "Some things aren't meant to be finished." It sounded like an ending, but she stayed a while after that, helping me water the mint, talking about recipes neither of us would ever try. Months later, we replaced the broken hinge on the cabinet, the same one I'd been pretending to fix when she came back. She handed me the screwdriver, our fingers brushing just enough to make both of us pause. "I'm glad you didn't leave," she said softly. "Me too." And that was all. No confessions. No declarations. Just the sound of the kettle in the background and the faint smell of mint drifting from the window. Sometimes, at night, I'd hear her moving downstairs, the creak of her floorboards, the quiet hum of an old song, and I'd think, maybe love isn't always a story you tell. Sometimes it's just the space you share without needing to explain it. Last Sunday at the park, she poured the tea, passed me the thermos lid. "Still too sweet," I said. She smiled, looking out at the trees. "You still drink it anyway." It wasn't a promise. It wasn't forever. It was enough. Some people never leave even when they do. Some just stay quieter. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?